Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Well, I've done it again. I have trespassed on the sanctimonious musical certitude of another cult, another bunch of music groupies, and a very interesting one that I have seldom encountered because I haven't really had much opportunity to, and because they tend to be rather quiet. Rather nice people, but they've perked up. Well, some of them have anyway. And in this case, it was in the most unlikely way. What happened was we did a talk. I did a talk recently, a list of musical trash that I love anyway, that I can't live without, but it's trash, it's junk. You got to admit it, it's just garbage. And one of the works on my list was Vaughan Williams' tone poem, The Lark Ascending. Well, it turns out that there's a whole bunch of larknicks out there who swear by the thing. But I want to talk about the cult first a little bit, because they're a rather unusual breed. They really are. Rather, tranquil, peaceful people who, can, only bare their teeth and, rend their garments when they're really riled. I first encountered them, or something like them, when I was in college. When I was in graduate school at Stanford on the peninsula up there near San Francisco, and the public radio there had their usual pledge drives, and the pledge drive piece was the Pachelbel Canon, and it was being played every 5 minutes. Oh my God! It was actually the pledge drive piece for all of public radio, I think, all over the country. But the idea was, send us your money and we'll play the Pachelbel Canon again. And for those of us who are a little bit more interested in music rather than just, public radio, which is a wonderful cause, don't get me wrong, but, it wasn't just the musical end of it that you were supporting there with your contribution, your tax-deductible pledge. You could also get a tote bag, and, you got all this other stuff if you sent money, depending on how much you would send them. But the Pachelbel Canon was the reward of choice. And it worked. It worked somehow. Apparently there was this sleeping giant. They're like the 17-year cicadas. These bugs that live underground and only all pop up by the billions when the temperature is exactly right. Well, they all came up out of the woodwork chirping away and sending in their money, and the Pachelbel Canon was going 24/7. And if there was ever an anodyne piece of music, it's the Pachelbel Canon. It's very pretty, and the arrangement by Jean-François Paillard, not even Pachelbel's original, which is an organ piece and which has a gigue attached to it, dance at the end. I remember very vividly when the Reinhard Goebel and Musica Antigua Köln released it because everybody recorded it, and all the period instrument people had to record it. And none of them sounded like Jean-François Paillard at all, because his was a romantic, slurpy, easy listening view of the work. And Goebel did it as a violin solo, and it was really fast, and he used Baroque dotted rhythm instead of do, 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 do. This was dum ba 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 dum, like this, and people bought it because it was on period instruments, and they all returned it because it didn't sound like the Pachelbel Canon. Oh my goodness! Well, there they were, and NPR, the wonderful marketing wizards at National Public Radio, found a way to rouse them to open their wallets and their pocketbooks. Well, turns out the Lark Ascending is kind of like that. We know what it is. You can tell from the title. It's a piece of music of complete niceness, incredible niceness. It doesn't have one iota of musical tension in it anywhere. And it's way too long for its material. And it's very, very pretty. It's incredibly pretty. But Vaughan Williams, where does it fit in Vaughan Williams' output? Well, the people who know the Lark Ascending tend not to know anything else. They don't know Floss Campy. They don't know the Serenade to Music. They don't know In the Fen Country, or his pastoral masterpiece, the Third Symphony. The Pastoral Symphony. It's in that vein, but he did it so much better in some of these other works. And that's why I listed it as my trash I can't live without. I can't live without it because it's extraordinarily beautiful and deservedly popular. I'm not saying that people shouldn't like it, but it's a little trashy. I mean, it just is. It's a little bit too much of what it is. You know what I mean? It just doesn't go anywhere or do anything, and the violin just sits there chirping like a little lark, going chirpy, 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 chirpy. If it didn't have that middle section, da 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 da, that business, it would be interminable. And the problem with it is that after the middle section, it's a middle section. The whole beginning thing comes back, and then it ends, but it doesn't. Then it starts up again, and then it finally ends. I mean, the lark won't shut up. It doesn't know when to go to sleep. I mean, it's okay, fine. So I don't think it's his greatest work in that style. But apparently Classic FM in the UK plays it constantly. And it's a wonderful piece for elevator music, or if you're in a waiting room, waiting for your root canal. It's calming, it's soothing. It makes no demands on the listener whatsoever other than to stay awake. I get it. I get it. It's what a lot of people think, soothing classical music ought to be, which is one of the reasons that it annoys me so much. Because, and I don't think that was Vaughan Williams' intention. It was never his intention. He was a completely sincere artist and a genius, and I don't, so it's not really that. It's what it's become, as with the Pachelbel canon. God knows Pachelbel didn't think the Pachelbel canon would be, the essence of fundraising activity for National Public Radio in the United States. Nor do I think that Vaughan Williams ever believed that the Lark Ascending would be the poster child for inoffensive classical music that requires absolutely nothing from the listener. Hindemith made a wonderful observation once. He was nothing if not a musical aristocrat. And I don't like snobbery. You know that. I mean, I try not to go there, but there's a reverse snobbery at work here in a way. A sanctimoniousness that's really kind of toxic and annoying. Hindemith wrote in one of his books about how the Liebestod, the Tristan and Isolde, was used as background music. It was used as background music to some sort of like alpine excursion or something like that, and it was playing in the background while you were on your cable car going up your ski lift or something like that. And he said, how can people do that? He said, use it that way. He said, the contrast between what they were using it for and what was happening to Isolde, was just horrifying. And I really get it. I mean, I get what he's saying there. There are certain things that are appropriate and certain things that aren't. The Lark Ascending is presented today as a piece of totally inoffensive nature poetry that, isn't worth a second listen, basically. And, yes, it works that way. It works as totally placid musical pablum. It really does. So anyway, I put it on my list, right? I put it on my list. And I know that you don't have to feel about it the way I feel about it. It's fine, it's to each his own. But I put it on my list, and oh my, some of the Lark Ascendites, ascended. They popped up. And one of the comments was just unbelievable. How dare you say this? The piece is beloved by millions. Well, that's an exaggeration. It's beloved by dozens, tens, who knows? A few hundred. Okay, fine. It's classical music. The word million should never occur in any discussion of classical music. But anyway, it's beloved by millions, and it evokes nice memories of the English countryside or thoughts of a lost beloved one, or so many people ask to have it accompany them on their final journey to heaven? Really? Do they? I mean, I must be missing that part, you know? So I was disgusted and appalled that you could say that about the Lark ascending. And it just went on and on. It was lovely. It was delightful. And, well, okay. I guess there are people who feel that way. And it's fascinating. And it's always the same dynamic, right? You say that something isn't as good as the people who love it think it is, and it calls into question their legitimacy as human beings and their taste and their, all the things that they feel that they're acquiring because they like this piece of music, the Lark ascending, which is asking nothing of them. I mean, it really is asking nothing other than the fact that they exist in a vegetative state while it's playing in the background. But anyway, so yes, they popped up, and there they were. Even the Lark ascending, this charmingly anodyne piece of music, it has people who are willing to go to the mat for it. I don't know whether that pleases me or not. I think it's a very, very interesting phenomenon, and it just goes to show. Actually, what it reminded me of also is my mother. You've met my mother. We did the Mother's Day thing. She taught for years in the Milford Public School system. And one of the things that I remember very, very clearly when I was younger, she taught a women's studies elective at the high school because she was so appalled by the low self-esteem of so many of the girls going to the school. She always said to me, "There's never been a boy who was so repulsive that there wasn't a girl who wanted to be his girlfriend." Just she felt these girls just had such a low self-image, and she wanted to give them a sense of history, a sense of themselves and fulfillment and all that. So she taught this women's history course. And I really admired that. I really did, because you just see people who just have very low expectations of themselves, of life, of their place in the world. Well, I kind of feel that way about the Lark ascending. I'm sorry. I mean, it's a strange connection, I know, but it's just music that asks nothing. Kind of bothers me. It just does. I can't explain exactly why, but that's how I feel about it, and that's why I think it's kind of trashy. However lovely it is, because there is music that beauty asks something of you, doesn't it? It says, pay attention, think. Well, maybe the Lark ascending does that for others. I can only speak for myself. And if it does do that for others, then they're right on the ball. They're absolutely correct to feel the way they do. So I don't want to get into too much trouble about it, but it just goes to show that there is no music that cannot acquire its groupies. And the groupies behave like all groupies behave, always, all the time, without exception. So that was kind of fun. Anyway, I feel like I'm doing my job, which is, poking the anthill with a stick once in a while, just to make sure that, they're still alive and thinking and at least, taking an active interest. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.